I wasn't sure. That was, this big screen is confusing me.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Oh, that's frozen.
This, like the last 3-4 months, mostly over the summer, especially in June or July, I got interested in MCPs. I didn't really, I sort of had a vague idea of what they were, but I didn't know how to actually like use one or get one on my computer or do whatever I needed to do. MCP is not master control program from Tron. It's actually a model context protocol, which is essentially a way for an LLM to speak directly to an application. So instead of say Claude Code saying, well, go into Rhino and do these 5 steps to make the thing you want, it can just speak directly to Rhino and start building stuff for you. So I'm going to start out with some images that I made. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a visual artist. I teach at the Corcoran School of Art and Design. Let's see, I'm going to let Ryan, because just for the folks in the room, they can't see my screen, so.
Yeah, I have to be near it. So.
But anyway, while he's doing that, the folks that are remote can sort of see. I'm just going to show some examples of some things I made. They're very strange images that look a little bit like 19th century engravings, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. Yeah, it's kind of weird using code to generate what's the word? To mimic 19th century technology, but that's where my head's at. I'm very anachronistic.
Love it.
And just hang on a sec.
I'm getting there.
Usually.
Gotta love all the tech guys in the room, and we can't get the AV to work. This is pretty typical GW stuff.
Yeah.
It's yours, have some.
It's yours.
Okay, guys, have something.
So, there it is.
The answer is yes. Yes. Yeah, no, it makes you feel like, yeah, of course, yeah, it'll breathe.
Now we're getting close, folks. Sorry for the pause.
It's hard not to.
I wonder what the thing is.
You handled it.
Okay, let's see.
Wow.
I'm just gonna turn my computer around. So
Yeah, I
guys
think
can
that's.
see what
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't,
So
it keeps freezing.
So guys, here's an example of, oh, there we go. Okay.
Back there.
So this is a weird little thing I made, an image I made. I'm gonna talk about, sort of a whole bunch of facets of this, but I just wanted to show some things first. Interestingly, the screen is not updating.
But everyone can see it.
Okay, cool.
Way too.
So I'm just going through these weird sort of sculptural looking things that look like 19th century engravings, possibly. And I'll talk a little bit about where they came from, but I just wanted to let it soak in a little bit. This is some odd stuff I've been doing. Now, where these images come from is about 15 years ago.
Oh, good.
I encountered a podcast called The History of the World in 100 Objects. It was created by Neil McGregor. He was the director of the British Museum. And he did a podcast where every episode he would spend about 20 minutes talking about a specific piece in the collection. And as soon as I started listening to this podcast, I thought, like, I don't want to see the actual images. Like, there's a coffee table book. I own it. I have never opened it. I still have not seen what the things really look like. I was just really fascinated by how my brain would translate these objects in my head. And so I started, I started sketching and doing drawings. And again, this is like about 15 years ago. I was trying to, it just didn't quite get traction. I was really interested in this idea, but it didn't quite go anywhere. Oh, there we go. And yeah, but it's still not updating. Anyhow, so there are these 100 images that I had in mind, these 100 objects that I wanted to make images of. And like I said, I started sketching. I would do this for a little while, would lose traction. A few years would go by, I would do nothing. At some point about 4 or 5 years ago, when DALL-E sort of hit the scene, And I was very interested in what DALL-E could do and how it would take a piece of text and translate that into an image. From that moment, my sort of spirit animal was Durr's rhinoceros. And this is actually a print that we have there's a copy of it here at the National Gallery. This is also object, I think, number 77 in the history of the world. And so it's in the book, and it sort of stuck in my mind. And the thing is, Durr had never seen a rhinoceros. He was in Nuremberg. There hadn't been a rhino that anybody had documented in Europe in 1,000 years at least. But what happened is when this rhino shows up in Portugal, all the merchants in Portugal start through their various, whatever it was, 15th, 16th century substacks, or sending out the messages to all their buddies around Europe, like, hey guys, we saw this crazy thing, you should check, And so Durr was certainly in Nuremberg. He was aware of what was going on, and there were a couple of descriptions that got to Nuremberg. So what he ended up, I'm sure he was like fascinated by this, and then he decided to do the drawing. He used like the text that's actually above this engraving is from Pliny the Elder. So this is like first century AD. So basically he's doing this image based entirely on a text, and it's a thing he's never seen before. And at a glance, if you squint your eyes, you're like, yeah, that's a rhinoceros. If you look closely, it's like what's going on with the armor and the scales and all kinds of weird little detail, extra horns and stuff like that. And even, when scientists knew this is not what a rhinoceros looks like, it was still the accepted image of, like in the textbook, that's the picture of rhinoceros. So this is sort of where I started thinking, oh, it would be interesting to take these descriptions, like I sort of transcribed in my notes, descriptions of these 100 objects. Let's see what happens when we put them into a diffusion model and see what it comes up with. So some early stuff I did in DALL-E. This is actually from the first object, which is the mummy of Hornegetef. Neil McGregor was like, I'm starting with this object because when I was a little kid and I came to the British Museum, my parents would bring me here, I was in love with the mummies. So he starts out with that. This is an early, probably done in DALL-E, 3 or 4 years ago. So what I ended up doing was I knew that for this engraving process that I want to do, and I'll come back to that, I knew I needed actually a 3D model. So how am I going to get an image turn an image into a 3D model? Well, it turns out there's a generative AI model for doing that. So I had to come up with these prompts that had a sort of a structure to them. It would start out, I want a photograph of a product photo of a minimalist white stone sculpture in the style of Brancusi and then I drop in the specific thing. And then at the end, I'd have another little sort of boilerplate thing that says the subject is evenly lit against a background that is flat chroma key green for compositing. And then in the middle is like the juicy bit. This is like, me sort of re-describing based on the podcast what I think this thing is. So there's actually a tool so this is Comfy UI. I've sort of shown that in previous GW coders. This is a great open source tool that lets you do all kinds of workflows with all kinds of different models. And in this case, I've got, this is Mummy Hornegetef, and it created this weird, figure within a figure. And I would do like hundreds, if not thousands of these for each of the objects. And so like I started really getting heavy into this in May or June, just generating all these images. And then what I do is when I find ones that I like, I will, select that image. And then for the model that I use to convert a 2D image to a 3D model, it helps if there's no background. It's just got the object. So because I chroma keyed green the background, it was really easy for me to delete the background. And then it goes back into Comfy UI into a different workflow. And you can see sort of from left to right, there's like image goes in, it does some stuff, and it generates a mesh at the end. Now, doing that thousands and thousands of times it gets tedious, and there's a lot of time wasted with me just like grab the picture, throw it into the model, run the model. Oh, by the way, once it generates the mesh, 3D meshes don't tend to be super clean, meaning they're not easy to 3D print. The meshes have holes, there's bits missing. So there's a little post-processing for the meshes. Fortunately, I found a library and basically I had Claude write a little Python script for me that said, okay, I've got an in folder with my 2D images. In the background, run this Python script, look in the folder, grab the first image, process it using this Hunyuan 3D model. And then, by the way, do the cleanup at the end of it and save the finished cleaned up mesh in another folder. So this was great. Like Claude just did this for me in no time. I was super happy. I, was proud of myself. I've got like the Python command in my Obsidian database, so I can just grab it whenever I need it. And so what would happen is I would run, I'd put like 50 images into the folder before I went to bed at night, run this script. And when I got up in the morning, my computer was about to melt. The screen was changing colors. I was really pushing the limits of the processing. It's about 10 minutes per job, to go from image to cleaned up mesh. So my computer's
Cool.
yeah, it's all local. This is not running on a server. This is
Yeah.
all open source stuff.
Oh.
I did, and I'll give a shout out to RTS. I was trying to get it to run on Pegasus. There were some issues, but just the process of me talking through that stuff with the RTS folks helped me figure out some stuff. It was just a great, a dialogue with those guys. They got me up to speed on some things and helped me clarify my thinking. So shout out to RTS. So let's see. Yeah, this is just, I've got everything backed up in a repo. So if I update stuff, it's all there. What's nice is in the repo, it even has like more instructions that are commented out. So like if I wanted to do some special tweaks, I know what to do. And so this is an example of like this thing running overnight, just melting a hole through my desk. This is a brand new computer that I'm working on. I bought it in March. I've probably already taken a year off of its life.
What is it?
It's a MacBook Pro 16-inch M5 Max chip, maximum RAM. It's
Running this on a laptop.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
so ridiculous.
so yeah, so this
You
is
can do this on.
this is like you're like here to disadvantage. So like this is like an example of one of the models in Rhino. It's like a clean mesh that's ready to go. Now, why this whole sort of 19th century engraving thing? So when I was a little kid, my mom had a copy of Gustave Doré's engravings from Dante's Inferno that completely captured my imagination. I promptly stole the book from her. I still have it. She's not asked for it back, so that's all good. But I love this rendering style where there's like these parallel lines that describe surfaces. That's super fun. Probably 10 or 15 years ago, I figured out a technique for sort of simulating that using 3D models. It required 3D software and a lot of work in Photoshop. There's actually many images that get generated and then composited together to make this final image. It's a slow, tedious process. So probably 10 years ago, I started thinking, how can I automate this process? Like, this is dumb. I shouldn't have to spend like an hour or 2 hours per image just to do like, work. So there's a tool that I use called Max MSP. It's a application / programming environment that was built for musicians and composers. Originally it was there was just Max, which was a tool for composers to create scores programmatically. So if you didn't write code, but you wanted to do scores not in a traditional notation way, this is a really cool app. And it works, it's sort of node-based, so it's sort of like, what was it, Pipes? I can't remember who made Pipes, but it's a node-based program, so you're working very visually where each of your functions is like a block, and then you just wire the blocks together in the configuration you want. Eventually they added on signal processing, that's the MSP part, and then eventually after that, they added signal processing allowed you not just to create the scores, but also to create the sounds that the scores were playing. And then, well, gosh, you're doing stuff in time. Why don't we add visuals as well? So they added a chunk to Max that accesses the GPU, which is really nice for fast stuff. So I've been using Max strictly for doing visual stuff. I'm not a musician. And this is where it gets interesting. About 3 months ago, it turns out somebody made an MCP for Max. So, okay, I can get Claude or whatever LLM I'm using to speak directly to Max and start building things for me there. Because like I cannot figure out how to build this tool that will make my engraving renderings. Can I use the MCP with an LLM to make this little app for me? So I wasn't even sure if I could install the MCP. Like I didn't understand what it even required, but I followed the instructions on the GitHub and it seemed to magically work. It was installed. I started using it. It's, it starts talking to Max. Okay, good so far. Somewhere along the line, as I was working with this, Claude says to me, hey, I see, we're sort of going back and forth on some issues with the MCP. Do you want me just to rewrite the MCP? Like I think I can clean this up at the code level. So I'm like, sure, why not? So I let it do its thing. And while it's doing its thing, I thinking to myself, I bet it would be really useful to have a RAG to go with this as well. And so I start up a different session with Claude. I'm like, hey, can you build a RAG for me from the Max MSP documentation? And it sort of thinks for a second. And it's like, yes. All the documentation, actually the documentation is chunked really well for a RAG already. The way the Max folks had set it up, great. I can totally build a RAG. And by the way, I see your like button with the MCP. Do you want me just to incorporate the RAG into the MCP? Sure, why not? So basically I started probably after work on a Friday. I'm sitting at the bar downstairs from my apartment having a glass of wine. I start this off on Friday. And by noon on Monday, I had my app to automate this rendering process built.
How many bottles of wine is that?
I wasn't at the bar the whole time.
Okay.
So anyway, let's see. So yeah, I had Max, I had it, Claude do the basic bones of the app were built by noon on Monday. And this screen is showing actually a patch in Max MSP. This is how, like what my program looks like. So for example, like in the upper left over here, you can see all the wiring for like just the connector to the MCP. Great. And I've left that in there because at some point I may want to make mods to this app. Now Max or Claude, when it was adding stuff and it was building out this patch, it looked like garbage. I actually went through and spent a fair amount of time like disentangling cables and moving stuff around and making it clean. This next little chunk at the top is so Max is built to work with MIDI. And that means I could like normally what I would do is all my little variables and parameters that I want to change, I'd have like a little graphical element and I'd be pushing my mouse around to like move a virtual knob or push a virtual fader or something like that. And I'm like, this is like, I'm tired of being at my keyboard and I'm tired of a mouse. Can I just use a MIDI controller to change the parameters? Yes, I can. I've got a little, like this is 32 pots that are actually 16-bit. So they're it's version of MIDI. So I can use floats for my parameters. So I get really nice fine tuning. Now this is where the next part of like Claude really kicks in. So I can, drop in, here's my, I've got like my folder of STLs that have been generated and I can drop one into a little drop zone. There are where I really needed help from Claude was rendering this line texture it's the particular technique I wanted to use for rendering those lines is called projective texturing. Most of the time when you add a texture to a model, it's just like a decal wrapped on the surface. Projective texturing is like where you have a virtual slide projector and it's projecting an image onto the model from a distance and from a particular angle. So I needed to write a shader. A shader is a little piece of OpenGL code that works directly on the GPU. It's like a little mini program. That's where I was really stuck. Like I don't have the OpenGL skills to write that piece of code. So it claims to have written it for me. I'm like, okay, does it work? Yes, it works. So towards the end of the big patch screen, I've got a whole bunch of little thumbnail windows. There's actually multiple layers that are getting composited together. Each of those layers is 12,000 pixels by 12,000 pixels in RGB. So this also, makes my computer run real warm. I mean, the battery, if I'm not plugged in, the battery will just be done in about half an hour. It's using a lot of juice. So it's basically compositing a couple of different layers of line textures going in different directions that I can control what the direction is. I can also control the direction of the lighting. That's a separate layer, and so on. So this is an example of one of the things that, this app that I built from start to finish. This is what I was trying to get to 15, 16 years ago. And then in a weekend in June, I made it happen. Now you're probably wondering, like, what do I do with these weird images and why am I making them 12,000 by 12,000? Because I am laser engraving these onto acrylic sheets, and then with the engraved sheets, I'll actually wipe in paint to draw out the image. And these are actually, and then, I figured like, oh, I've got these 3D models, I might as well just 3D print them just to see what they look like. Because some of the stuff where it translates 2D into 3D, sometimes it's like strikingly accurate. And then other times it is really strikingly weird and I love it. So these are all, this little array of stuff that you see is actually up in the Corcoran, it's the faculty staff exhibition that sort of soft opened last week. And then there was a little drama on Monday. So there's a little bit of rework happening on the show, but the show's basically up. And if you want to see this stuff in real life, the show's called The Gift in Motion. It's up till December 5th at the Flag Building, and the gallery's on the second floor, 517th Street Northwest. Public hours Wednesday through Saturday, 1 to 5. You are all invited to come check it out. And that's all I got. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Awesome. Wow.
I hope that wasn't too mystifying. Can't find my mouse cursor. Let's see.
So can you describe the last step again? So you get the 1200 by 1200, all that. And then you're doing what to it and engraving it on what?
Okay, so I've got a digital file.
Yeah.
The process in Max MSP is it'll actually generate all these layers, but it's also built into the process to composite them the way I want them composited. There's it's not just a straightforward like 50% of this and 50% of that. There's some channel calculations that are going on. And because I don't really need the color data, at the very end, it converts it to grayscale just to save size. The problem is on GPUs, they do not only deal with RGB data. They will not do grayscale. So I have to work in RGB on the GPU. But the final file, it just needs to be grayscale. So it does the conversion to grayscale. So then I've got this, humongous file that's essentially a Photoshop file. I think I'm saving them as TIFFs maybe, or I can't remember what they're saved as, but saved as something. From there, I will engrave those on a laser. We've got a bunch of 18 by 24, 75 watt lasers in the fab lab at the Corcoran. I'm getting like sheets that are 18 by 24 that are a 1/4 inch thick acrylic. Acrylic is great on lasers because it cuts like butter. It's actually soft enough that you can cut all the way through a 1/4 inch piece of acrylic without any problem, and it's a smooth cut. Now I'm not cutting through, I'm just doing, and hitting the surface. So the images are essentially, they're engraved onto the acrylic. So there's like a gouge or a cut in the acrylic. And then from there, I just get some oil paint and like wipe it on,
Mhm.
wipe it off, the stuff that stays in the grooves, that draws out the image. So, and then I just let it dry. Like the oil's gotta dry. And that's it, done. I don't, does that answer the question or is there?
That's it.
Okay, yeah.
I have a question about the MCP and the RAG
Yeah.
stuff that you're doing.
Yeah,
So you said you found a GitHub repo that had done an MCP for your tool.
Yep.
And then you asked Claude to Claude offered to redo it. Are you contributing that back to the MCP?
I'm not.
The Max GitHub repo?
I'm not because for a couple of
Because it was
reasons.
custom for what you did.
Not at that point, no. It was just like, hey, I see some stuff that might be more efficient if I do it this way. I haven't offered it back for a couple of reasons. I think the biggest reason is I don't understand the code or what it did well enough to feel confident that I'm not polluting somebody else's repo. For my purposes, this seems to work. And that's fine. And it's not that I'm trying to be selfish or not share it. I actually do have this in a separate repo. I'm not like broadcasting that I made it to the world at large, but I'm just wary. I think a big problem that GitHub is and the open source community is gonna have to deal with is like AI contributions that complete, and especially if AI is then getting retrained on GitHub, like it's we're building in that gray goose cycle that I'm just, until I know better and I feel 100% confident this is really clean code and it really works and it's generally extensible to other people's purposes. I don't feel right about, like, if somebody reached out to me and said, hey, can I use yours? I'd be like, absolutely, the caveat is I have no idea what's going on. I'm not sufficiently qualified to release this into the world in that way. If you feel like you want to roll the dice, sure. But and I definitely don't want to muddy up somebody else's repo. I don't know. That seems like
It's called the YOLO license. It's licensed by YOLO. It's like here. Good luck. I hope it works for you.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Hope it doesn't melt your computer, but whatever.
right.
Well, then they'll use Claude then. We do it again, it becomes something else,
Yeah.
a third level derivation of it.
Yeah, but nobody will know what's actually going on.
And no,
I think, in my case, like, I was trying to do some stuff and it, I was going through that loop with Claude, this sort of back and forth where it's like, that didn't quite work, let's try it again.
Yeah.
And those particular kinds of things that I was struggling with may not be the same kinds of things another user would struggle with. So, an LLM might make different kinds of changes for a different user.
Yeah.
But this idea of like personal software, like, just making a piece of software for me without worrying about anybody else, that's kind of an amazing thing that's happening right now. Like an amazing possibility. If you can just figure out like what's the break-even point where the energy I'm spending on tokens is far greater than me just learning how to do it myself. That's where I get concerned about the AI stuff is like it's got some really interesting possibilities, but it's also really easy to go way overboard with token usage. And that's another reason why I try and do it as much locally as I can, because I don't want to unnecessarily tap like I know my electricity bill, my Pepco bill, which I'm not happy about. I'd rather be happier knowing like, oh, this is directly because of the stuff I'm running on my laptop, not because I'm subsidizing a data center.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
As niche as possible. That's what we've been saying. It's like they're not apps, they're apps. They're as niche as possible software. It's like everybody has their own thing for whatever they want to do.
Which is probably not good for science, but for art, it's like, why not?
Yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, like, yeah, it's up to you if you then want to take that and make it something that others can use, right? And that decision isn't just being generous or not. It's a decision of like, is this safe for others to use, like, am I confident that a push can and should use it? So,
Is your work safe to use?
I don't know, I hope so, I've tested it.
Zoe
crazy.
downloaded it.
Yeah,
So.
I did a ton of testing on it, but that's all I did. I mean, I did not edit the source code at all, like myself, and I don't think anybody would be anymore. I just had it run through a giant battery of tests, and I was like, oh, test for this too, test for this too, and it wrote the test and it ran the test, so.
They're
Yeah,
notorious for cheating on their tests.
they were, but now they actually run them. I mean, and like I can, as soon as a full test suite is created, I run it myself, yeah, but it's not like, there's not like, if this is here, just skip this test, like that's not there anymore, it used to be. But they don't anymore, so I think it's changed a lot about how you're gonna develop things, but this was the one I'm talking about, is that earmark thing. I woke up Sunday morning wanting to listen to an article, and then I was like, by afternoon, I was like, okay, now I can't make it that fast. It just pitched the idea, all the tools were there, and it wrote everything. So in a very similar way, it's built it. So, I don't know. It's a weird thing to be in right now.
Yeah.
You can build software way faster than you can vet it. But I'm also not convinced that like me hand vetting it would be like hand developing it would be any better. Like I might be introducing all kinds of bugs that I'm unaware of that, right? And so
The thing is, if you build it yourself, you know what all the parts are. And so you can start to like track down like, huh, this isn't right, maybe it's in this chunk.
yeah,
And if it's getting, unless you read every line of code, which like sort of defeats the purpose of.
Yeah.
Then like there's a disadvantage. I think there's like a contextual awareness that you as a, hand coder.
Yeah.
Have that.
yeah, there's nothing that's
Elements
ever
are
gonna
gonna have
replace that, yeah.
I have a question, another art question.
Mhm.
You started this out saying that you had, sort of an idea based on a copybook that you've never seen.
Yeah.
Did you circle back? Have you, are these now like images, your and Claude's version of the image? Have you compared them to the?
I have not compared them. I'm still
Is that in
waiting
the
because
plans?
the project is not completely done. It's like, what happened is. There was another body of work that I've been working on for about 3 years, and I showed that stuff. Like a big show of that stuff in February. And I sort of reached a place where it's like, okay, it's time to let that rest. It's not that I may not make more of those pieces, but it's like, I need to let that rest for a little while. I need to refresh. What am I gonna do? And then this 100 objects thing was like, I really want to do that. And it makes sense with some stuff I'm thinking about with AI and like, what does it mean to take, to translate a piece of text, whether it's an AI or a person, taking an idea of a thing and then rendering that. So I got really excited about that, and the tools were kind of there, and like just a whole bunch of things intersected all at the same time. That I read about the MCP. I went and found the repo for it. Yes, eventually I will look at the book. I think once I have a show with like the goal for this is I'm gonna have 100 12 by 12 inch acrylic engraved pieces, plus probably a lot more stuff, because any one of the objects, there's so many cool versions that like, there isn't just one of, the mummy of Hornegetef, there's like at least a dozen, probably more, like I could probably just work with that one image for 5 years. I'm not gonna do that. I'm also also the 3D models, like I was just printing those on my FDM printer at home out of PLA and then maybe spray painting them a little bit. I think I'm really interested right now in ceramics. I've never done ceramics. Also not a sculptor, like I was trained, like my first language is drawing, and then painting comes right after that. So I think in 2D. Working in 3D is like a whole new thing for me, and I've never been particularly drawn to it, but right now it just sort of feels like I need to spend some time with that. And coincidentally, the ceramics program at the Corcoran person who's the main studio manager for that, he's really interested in how 3D printing can be applied to ceramics. So it's like, okay, can we start doing this? And if we can get that facility at the Corcoran, like we know how to do it, we've got the gear, we're actually teaching it as part of the pedagogy. That also means I've got in place all the things I need to do to make ceramic versions of these, and that opens up a whole lot of possibilities. So I could totally see doing another 100 pieces that's the 100 objects as ceramic objects. So I mean, like, I could, keep going with this thread of work for probably at least 3 more years, maybe longer. Once I've got the show, that's like this is the statement, here's the 100 things, I mean, the ancillary bits and pieces, whatever that show is, at that point, the weekend after the show opens and I'm decompressing, I will open the book and look at the pictures. That's when that will happen.
Awesome.
It's good that you have it planned.
I mean, I don't want to
You
do,
better pick out a good bottle of wine for it too.
I'm cutting back on the wine.
Ah,
I am, but I just don't want to look at the images prematurely because the work isn't,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
quite there yet, so. This is still definitely in process, but the thing that's important is like, I'm building the tools that I need to then, make the images, so.
Are we gonna be able to include something about it at the Exploratorium in the spring?
100%, we could, should we, not too sure, but yeah.
The story with the rhino is really compelling, and.
Well, what's great about that too is like, we've got a partnership with the NGA, so I could maybe get somebody who like in the prints or works on paper team to like talk about that piece. There's all kinds of cool stuff that could happen, but like the fact that we've got that here in DC, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I should mention that David, James and I are working on a pop-up museum exploratorium for AI and art that we hope to have in the spring, like winter, spring timeframe, to do a physical manifestation of AI. So it's not just kind of this weird thing that happens in a computer somewhere that no one quite understands, so. I'm not sure if we will answer that question, but we will make it weirder and more physical in some way.
Well, I think weirder, but also, at least my thinking is to demystify this stuff, because it's actually. A lot of this AI stuff in its current state, like LLMs, I think is a little bit mechanical Turkish. So much of the work that has to happen to make it work is. A lot of people did a lot of sweat equity in that. It wasn't like it just magically
Yeah.
appeared. I'm also,
Well, the D-Days group, they went to like a large data center out in Virginia. I didn't get to go that day, but I've watched like YouTube videos of the building of data centers.
right,
It is amazing engineering, like to water cool
Mhm.
all those GPUs. It's just insane to begin with. You just like are piping water through your servers, but they do it all the time. And what they've come up with, it's amazing engineering if nothing else.
right.
Also shows you the total insanity of the idea of putting those chips in space,
Yeah.
because there's no medium to remove the heat.
Right,
Right, so it's not just gonna dissipate on its own, you have to have, anyway, it's. Like, I don't know if anybody actually read the engineering ideas before they gave them $1 trillion valuation, but. It's not gonna work. So anyway,
It's the space, like.
SpaceX's whole idea of putting chips in space to like. I don't know, keep the data centers off the earth and like. Just the heat transfer problems alone are. Completely unachievable from the engineering side, it's just is beyond science fiction.
Well, I've heard,
Like getting to Mars would be so much easier
well,
than putting like chips in space.
I've heard Mars described, I think Cory Doctorow said this in his podcast, that Mars, is like the equivalent of, no, if you released all the nukes right now on the Earth, it would still be like 100 times more livable than Mars is right now. Something like that. So.
And I still think that's easier than putting chips in space. Anyway, it's.
Some people thought electric cars would be so difficult to ever come around.
No, really, no, I never thought that. I thought it was pretty straightforward. We just needed to scale it up, and they did. Anyway, this is really cool.
Yeah, great job, that's
Yeah,
very cool.
very cool
So
stuff.
you're so technically just right in there, it's really, really cool, all the stuff you're doing.
I love that, my favorite piece of this whole story was that you used a MIDI controller to, it's like, why, but because you can.
Well, no,
It works.
so